believe the defendant knew my daughters had a bright future ahead, and that is the reason he took their lives.
I'm sorry for taking Sydney away.
Judge Condon, I did not want my son to die.
I never set out to hurt anybody.
I was screaming for her, trying so hard.
Emotional testimony filled the courtroom this morning as the man who shot and killed twin girls in Lemon Grove in 2020 faced sentencing. It has been a very emotional court, and even before the hearing began, the deputy district attorney handed out boxes of tissues. The twin girls, Kira and Leah Christopher, were just teens. The first person to speak today was the girls' mother.
I believe the defendant knew my daughters had a bright future ahead, and that is the reason he took their lives. He was jealous of the adults they were going to become. He was jealous of the mother I was. I think his jealousy stemmed from his own childhood trauma and neglect.
Joanne Hoyt's hands were shaking as she spoke to the judge. She talked about how her family was ripped apart by what the defendant, Dwayne Groves Jr., did. He not only killed her two girls, but also tried to kill her only son, her eldest. He traumatized the other children in the house that day, who witnessed their sisters being shot. She says they all still suffer from the trauma of what they saw. The twins, who attended Helix High School, were good students looking forward to celebrating their 16th birthday and graduating from high school. Groves, Hoyt's ex-boyfriend, shot and killed them in April 2020 in their Lemon Grove home. There was no trial because he changed his plea to guilty. There were moments today when he was crying. Hoyt only referred to him as the defendant when she spoke about him. She mentioned that because of COVID, her girls didn't get a proper burial.
When we buried the twins, no one could attend. It was at the beginning of the pandemic. Due to lockdowns and restrictions, only 10 people were allowed. He stole everyone's ability to find closure that day. He stole everyone's abilities to say goodbye.
It was an emotional court hearing as a woman learned her punishment for a DUI crash that killed her friend. Prosecutors say she left her friend to die after veering off the freeway and crashing into a creek. Jason Sloss is in downtown San Diego with the sentence handed down.
There will never be enough words to describe my incomprehensible pain, this unimaginable loss.
There was a tearful reaction in court from the family of Sydney Waller, a 21-year-old woman killed in a DUI crash near Mission Bay nearly 3 years ago. She was a passenger in the car, driven by her lifelong friend, Jennifer Xavier, who was convicted last year of murder and DUI. Xavier listened as the victim's parents and brother gave emotional impact statements.
You stripped so many people of a true angel, friend, and family member. I truly hope you learn from your experience, because 2 families have been torn apart because of you.
The crash happened on the night of March 4th, 2021. According to the prosecutor, Xavier was speeding when her car went off the I-5 freeway and crashed into a creek near Mission Bay. The car overturned and was partially submerged. Xavier walked away from the wreck, leaving her friend behind. Firefighters extricated Waller, who died 3 days later in the hospital.
How different would this world be if you had decided to make the right decision, not to get behind the wheel and not to leave my daughter in the creek to drown?
How could you leave Sydney to die? I can only imagine how scared and frightened Sydney was while trapped under water, not knowing where the exit was. I hope that is what prison is going to feel like for you.
Prosecutors say that on the night of the crash, the women had gone out to bars in Pacific Beach. Xavier then got behind the wheel, drunk and under the influence of Xanax. Just before the crash, Waller sent her brother text messages saying she was terrified as Xavier was speeding through traffic at more than 100 miles an hour. Xavier also made a statement in court before she was sentenced to 19 years to life.
I drank and I drove, and I can't tell you enough how regretful I am for that. I'm sorry for all the pain and anger you all feel. I'm sorry for taking Sydney away. There's nothing I can do to ever make up for this.
A former NYPD officer has been sentenced to 25 years to life in prison after being found guilty of murdering his son.
Judge Condon, I did not want my son to die.
He shed tears and spoke out for the first time, offering what attorneys called a truthful apology. Despite his best efforts, the judge was not swayed.
I sentenced myself to a lifetime filled with extreme regret, remorse, and grief.
NYPD officer Michael Velva was handed the maximum sentence of 25 years to life.
An 8-year-old boy who right now should be getting excited for Christmas is dead.
The 43-year-old was convicted of murder last month in the death of his son, Thomas, who died of hypothermia in January 2020 after being forced to sleep in the family's freezing garage.
Never let this happen again.
An emotional message from the judge was followed by applause from parts of the packed courtroom. Several of the jurors who ultimately decided Velva's fate during the 5-week trial in November also showed up.
We felt like we needed to come here today and see an end to it.
We wanted to make sure that this man got the absolute biggest sentence he could under the law.
He's getting exactly what he deserved. He's a horrible human being.
Prosecutors, who argued for the maximum sentence all along, stated that Velva, even from a jail cell, will continue to have more luxuries than Thomas was ever given, including food and heat. They emphasized that he completely and utterly failed as a father.
As of this defendant, we will never know what Thomas could have been, what he could have become, and what his mark on the world would.
But Velva's attorney argued that his client may have acted recklessly, but was not a cold-hearted murderer.
It was a perfect storm of uncontrolled outbursts and a series of poor decisions.
Velva's defense team plans to file a notice of appeal. Meanwhile, his ex-fiancée, Angela Polina, will head to court in January for her alleged role in Thomas's murder. In court, Stacy Sanchez broke down in tears as she was sentenced for murder. Sanchez was drunk when she struck 69-year-old Jackson Olson in North County, then drove another half-mile with his body lodged in her windshield. The victim's family attended the hearing to share their pain over the loss of their loved one. The emotional moment intensified when Olson's niece began her statement. Sanchez became so overwhelmed and hysterical that she had to leave the courtroom. Sanchez was found guilty of second-degree murder, gross vehicular manslaughter, and hit and run in April. Police reported that she was intoxicated, with a blood alcohol level more than twice the legal limit, when she hit Olson on an Oceanside sidewalk in June 2016. The district attorney's office described her actions as showing a conscious disregard for human life.
I love my Uncle Jack. I will never get another opportunity to see my uncle. Because of your actions, Stacy Sanchez, my heart is broken.
I'm sorry.
During the horrific accident, police say Jackson Olson's body was propelled through the windshield and ended up in the passenger seat of Sanchez's car. Despite this, she continued driving with him in the car for at least half a mile. The impact severed part of his leg. Sanchez was eventually arrested at her home, with shards of glass still in her hair. She was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Although Sanchez is an undocumented immigrant, the DA's office stated that her immigration status did not influence the sentencing. In a Sarasota courtroom, the man accused of killing a mother of 3 faced her grieving family before being sentenced to prison. As he took the stand to speak, the tension in the room was palpable, with the victim's family holding their breath in anticipation. When the defendant finally spoke, his unexpected words stunned many in the courtroom.
I never set out to hurt anybody. I'm very sorry for everything that's happened.
Sometimes, apologies can feel empty, while other times, they seem to sting more than they heal.
If I could give my own life, I would, just for you guys to have Donna back for 1 second.
But the apology from DUI hit-and-run driver Blake Tallman, punctuated by tears, left the Sarasota family with mixed feelings.
Nothing can fix what has been done.
But for 53-year-old Donna Chin's family, Blake Tallman's apology, though emotional and tearful, actually meant something.
He made that statement today. It was a very big exhale for me to say, okay, he did the right thing there, and I do think he was genuinely sorry. I think that's huge.
Tallman's blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit when he struck and killed Chin, who was jogging with her dog along State Road 758 nearly 2 years ago. Her husband quietly reminded us that grief takes its own bitter time.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that all of us don't think of Donna.
Tallman pled no contest to DUI manslaughter, was fingerprinted, and taken away to prison. If he serves his full sentence, he'll be nearly 40 when he's released.
You can't bring her back, so nothing can change it. it gives 15 years is a long time.
Apologies are often just words, and this one might be no different. Yet, Chin's family hopes that even if just words, it will lead to more.
I hope peace is next. I know Donna is in peace. I'd like us to be in peace and just celebrate the fact and be thankful that we have our family.
Donna's family says they have much to look forward to this Thanksgiving, with many out-of-town relatives visiting. A grieving mother expressed that the young woman responsible for the crash that killed her baby girl is, quote, a selfish person who needs to pay for her crime. The driver, 24-year-old Danielle Kellogg, admitted to being drunk and high when her SUV collided with another vehicle, resulting in the death of the baby. Kellogg was sentenced to the maximum time in prison for her actions. While nothing can bring back little Bailey, the mother feels that justice has been served. The courtroom was filled with emotion, and there were audible sighs of relief as the judge announced Kellogg's sentence.
In this court, that you be sentenced to an indeterminate sentence of imprisonment having a maximum of 15 years.
Danielle Kellogg pleaded guilty in March to first-degree vehicular manslaughter for the crash that took the life of Bailey Dion. This was Kellogg's second drunk driving offense. Bailey's mother, Denise Tyne, addressed the court, describing the profound impact of losing her daughter on November 27th. She shared the ongoing pain and struggles her family has faced since that tragic day.
And I did try crawling out of the car to get to her. And I was screaming for her, trying so hard. But no one would let me see her because they didn't want me to see how badly she was hurt.
She expressed her frustration that Kellogg didn't do anything to help that morning.
How could she see my baby hanging out of the car that she tore in 2 pieces, and how could she hear me screaming, "Where's my baby?" and not even come over?
She talked about how life has become a continuous struggle.
The situation is tearing mine and my fiance's relationship apart. We just become different people, and it's so hard. I struggle to get out of bed most days, as does he.
But more than anything, she talked about the pain she's been feeling since the crash.
When I run into people who don't know who I am and have been asking how many children I have, my heart crushes and I can't breathe because I say 2. The first time I was asked this, my daughter said, "No, Mommy," and pointed to the ceiling. And she said, "What about Bailey?" The second time I was asked this, I said 2. I left and got back in my car and cried and promised Bailey I would never say only 2 again. I'm a mommy of 3, one is an angel now.
It's a pain that even Danielle Kellogg admitted she can't ease. Ben Luke Ruiz tragically hit and killed by Jacob Coffey. The courtroom was packed with people as his mother spoke about the intense emptiness she felt, describing it as a hole in her soul. Despite her ongoing struggle, she continues to move forward. This tragedy took place in the Five Corners area of Farmington. Residents within a 5-mile radius remembered Luke as a quiet leader who grew up in a tight-knit neighborhood with around 20 kids who became like extended family. Luke had graduated from Farmington High the previous year and had just finished what his coach called his best baseball game of the season against New Britain on the night he was hit and killed by 21-year-old Jacob Coffey. Parents of his grieving friends testified emotionally about how Luke's death had deeply affected their children, with some even dropping out of college. Neighbors talked about seeing Luke and his brothers grow up together, with now just 2 brothers who rarely leave home and seem rarely happy. The courtroom was told that the traffic light had been red for 18 seconds when Coffey, who had been drinking heavily after going to a concert, hit and killed Luke, leaving the entire community reeling from the consequences of one reckless decision.
The result of Jacob Coffey's decisions that night has left us with a loss that's simply unimaginable. The pain and sorrow that I experience every second, every minute of every day is never ending.
I know it doesn't change anything, but from the bottom of my heart, I'm truly so sorry.
The judge sentenced Jacob Coffey to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of release after serving 5 years, followed by 5 years of probation. He will be 27 when he gets out. After the sentencing, Luke's parents expressed hope that this sentence would discourage others from drinking and driving. They emphasized that it wasn't just an accident, but a reckless choice with devastating consequences. Nikolai Mure will be sentenced on July 31st for the stabbing death of Isaac Schumann and for injuring 4 others. The court announced the sentencing date less than a week after Mure was convicted of first-degree reckless homicide. He was also convicted on charges related to injuring AJ Martin, Dante Carlson, Anthony Carlson, and Riley Madison. all of whom testified against him at the trial. It took the jury fewer than 7 hours of deliberation to find him guilty. In many ways, Nikolai Mure's trial hinged on witness credibility. And the nearly 3.5-minute cell phone video of the escalating encounter.
If there was no video, how hard would that have made your job? What would that case have looked like?
It would have made the jurors' job very hard. I'm so thankful that we had a video to kind of base our thoughts on it.
A panel of 12 jurors, 6 men and 6 women, found Mure guilty on 6 charges, including first-degree reckless homicide. The jurors requested to remain anonymous while sharing insights into the deliberation process.
It's not like anybody had a fence behind him or were holding him there. He could have went, even if it was the wrong direction, he could have walked away.
We felt like we put on a good defense, but in many ways, self-defense is a community standard, and it's very dependent upon which group of 12 people within the community you ask.
Or he could have walked right past everybody and went back to his group.
Both jurors reasoned that if Mure threw the first punch, as several witnesses testified, he could not then claim self-defense.
You went to Mr. Mure, correct?
Yeah, I went to the guy who was punching people first.
Correct. Again, based upon your memory that he pulled someone's hair and punched them from behind, correct?
Based on the memory that I know that he punched someone, yes,
Okay.
It doesn't matter how he punched them. I know he punched them, and he shouldn't have.
Prosecutors included a charge of battery, arguing that Mure struck Madison Cohen first, which sparked the physical altercation.
Why was it important to start your kind of deliberations or conversations around the battery?
The Madison Cohen battery charge was a really big thing for the whole case because what that basically amounted to is, who threw the first punch? We had more people that said that he punched her.
While there was little support in the room for Mure's claim of self-defense, 2 or 3 jurors pushed for a conviction on the intentional homicide charges.
But after looking at everything overall, I think it was just more of a freak thing. It was people in the moment. I don't think initially he had the thought of, I'm going to kill one of these boys or all these boys.
Do you think he hurt or helped his case by going on the stand?
I don't think he had much choice but to go on the stand. I think if he really was going to plead self-defense and have a case, I think he needed to take the stand to explain himself.
I lied about the knife.
Was that your knife?
Yes, it is. It was.
In this case, which I think is probably with a lot of cases, it actually hurt him. Just like I am saying, because the stories did not match. There were so many things that were not true that he said.
As to count 1 of the information, Isaac Schumann, the jury finds Nikolai Mure guilty of first-degree reckless homicide as submitted.
In the end, jurors took less than 7 hours to sift through 8 days of testimony, nearly 50 witnesses, and about 30 pages of jury instructions to reach unanimous verdicts convicting Mure. The now 54-year-old remains jailed in Hudson, Wisconsin, where the district attorney says he faces up to 97 years in prison when he is sentenced at the end of July. The final decision on his sentence will be made by the trial judge. In the heart of New Jersey, the media is captivated by a shocking discovery: a dismembered body found in a suitcase on a rainy day. But the real mystery begins when it's revealed that nurse Melanie McGuire cut her husband into 3 pieces and drowned him on April 28, 2004. Shackled and brought in, she looks more like a beast than a human, with her actions mirroring it.
At the end of the day, Ms. McGuire was not convicted because of ineffective assistance on behalf of her trial attorneys. She was convicted because there's overwhelming evidence of her guilt. Her trial attorneys were able to get acquittals on 4 of the 8 charges. The fact that they couldn't get the grand slam and acquit her on everything doesn't mean they were ineffective. They did everything they could. They were outstanding for her. She not only got the minimal requirement for effective assistance of counsel, she got far beyond that. She got outstanding representation by 2 of the best trial attorneys that have come before a court in New Jersey. This court should recognize that and deny her request for an evidentiary hearing.
I would ask the court to not look at each case, at each issue individually, but as part of the context of the entire trial, because the state's case was in a circumstantial case consisting of small individual points that should have each been attacked and challenged. And many of them were allowed to go unchallenged, unexplained, or went to the jury with half of the information. It's easy to say, well, this wouldn't have made a difference, or that wouldn't have made a difference. But when you put it all together in a trial where the jury knows what's at stake and understands the definition of reasonable doubt, these many small issues taken together can mean the difference between victory or defeat.
Reviewed the matter, read the briefs, and what I'm going to do is give you guys a written opinion, which will be mailed to you next week, no later than Friday, 12/3. Thank you both for coming in.
Don't have much to say outside of that, the four corners of our papers. I think first, though, the one person who I'd like to call on to speak about Melanie, someone who knows Melanie, and that's Allison, her friend Allison.
I'd like to say a few words on behalf of Melanie. I've been a friend of Melanie since 1987. 20 years is a long time, and in that time, I've come to know Melanie as the person she truly is. I can honestly say she is not the woman depicted by the prosecution, the media, and the internet blogs. That creation, that fiction, bears no resemblance to Melanie.
Your Honor, I will, as I always have in this courtroom, restrict my comments to the evidence that was presented at trial. And in doing just that, I would like to respectfully point out to the court that although there was much discussion about the victim in this case, Mr. McGuire, there was not one shred of evidence, Judge, not one shred that came from that witness chair.
Bill McGuire was an integral part of our family. We've had to endure our friend's reputation being dragged through the mud. Bill's minor imperfections were magnified to cover the acts of a selfish, arrogant, and manipulative individual. I will never have another best friend like the one I found in Bill.
Nature and the complexity and the scope of this criminal episode involved many, many overt actions committed over a 3-week period, spanning 4 different states, and reflected a willfulness and a malice that goes far beyond the elements of the crime in our law. The desecration of William McGuire's remains was particularly heinous and depraved. His body was treated as trash. It was and sawed apart and then packaged in garbage bags. In this case, the crime was so heinous, so cruel, and so depraved that the court finds that the maximum sentence should be imposed. The desecration that has been considered by this court has been a significant element that causes this court to consider the aggravating factors associated with and to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law. All right, counsel, thank you for your patience and cooperation. The defendant is remanded to the Department of Corrections at this time. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience and cooperation. These proceedings are concluded.
On May 25th, 1991, Timothy William disappeared. 11 months later, his unrecognizable body shocked the department. No one believed a mother could do this until the truth came out, leaving everyone speechless. The courtroom buzzed as the witness revealed the extraordinary events, touching everyone with the unfolding story.
That Saturday, May 25, 1991, were you working that day at the carnival?
I was.
Do you recall what you were doing at the carnival that day?
Operating a kid's ride.
And do you recall which kids ride it was?
Called the combination.
Let me direct your attention to approximately 7:15 p.m. on May the 25th. Did you make any observations of a boy on that occasion in the vicinity of your ride?
I did.
Tell us what you saw.
I saw a young boy fitting the description of Timothy Wilson.
Okay, and where did you see him?
On my ride.
Describe the boy that you saw that day.
Young boy, about 5 years old, tank top, shorts. He had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shoes on.
Okay, the tank top, what color was it?
I believe it was red.
The shorts that he was wearing, what color were the shorts?
I couldn't tell you. It had some kind of design on the side of them.
Okay. And footwear was?
Teenage Mutant Ninja sneakers.
Okay. And this boy came to your ride, is that correct?
Another witness, now retired, is speaking out in the case, still haunted by the horrific brutality they saw.
And why did you do that?
Well, there was a number of factors, actually. The first thing was the sneaker. That was a mystery whether or not it could be the boy's sneaker. And I also knew about Michelle Leszczynski herself giving several different versions of what had occurred. I knew from talking to other law enforcement people, pardon me, who had interviewed her, that her demeanor was at times hostile, sometimes vulgar. She had left an interview. As an investigator, that gets your attention. That's why she was a suspect prior to me even getting the case. From my investigation, once the case was assigned to me and I knew exactly where the sneaker was found by Mr. O'Malley, this was an isolated, desolate area. Anybody doing something that didn't want to be seen, this is a place to do it. And when I found out that Florida Fulfillment is literally around the corner, a 5, maybe 10-minute walk away, my suspicion that she hurt her son and dumped the body where we found it went right off the charts. Chronologically, the first thing found literally in less than a minute after we lined up and started the formal search was the second sneaker. And it was the corresponding shoe to the one that had previously been found. The first one, my recollection is, was a left shoe, and the one we found was the right shoe. Same logo, pattern, everything. And it was found within 20, 30 yards of the first shoe. And a few hours later, a skull was found by one of the New Jersey State Police people. And I found what appeared to me to be either be a blanket or a fragment of a blanket or a section of a blanket within 20 feet or so of where the skull was. Something similar to a pillowcase or a pillowcase itself was found, again, in the general vicinity of where the sneakers were.
On the second day, was a balloon?
Yes.
And what kind of balloon was
It had this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle theme to it, and it was in the vicinity of where the body was.
When the victim and perpetrators are part of the same family, forgiveness and comfort seem like distant dreams, leaving everyone else in a painful limbo.
Do you recall what day that was?
Well, it would be the 20, well, it would be the next day. It would be the 26th because it would be after midnight.
Okay. And without telling us what Michelle told you when you spoke with her, what was her demeanor like when you spoke with her?
She was crying. She was upset.
In the days after Cindy went missing, did you speak with Michelle?
Every day.
What was her demeanor on those days that you spoke with her?
Upset, distraught.
Did she indicate to you anything about how she was getting along?
She wasn't sleeping or eating.
Show you what's been marked D121 for identification. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize it as?
It's graduation, yeah.
What does the tassel say on it?
1991.
And where did you observe this?
In his closet.
Do you recall when exactly it was, the date that you first found out that Cindy's remains?
I don't. I know it was about 9 months from the time that he went missing.
Was there a funeral for Cindy?
Yes, there was.
Did you attend the funeral?
Yes, I did.
Did Dave come with you?
Yes, he did.
Did you have an opportunity to observe Michelle's demeanor during the funeral?
Yes, I did.
What was her demeanor then?
She was, to me, she was in shock. She was kind of just there, and she was upset. Her face was all swollen.
Did you assist her in any way at the funeral?
I did.
How so?
We walked her up. My dad and I had to hold her from one side to the other, walking up the stairs of the church.
Mr. Foreman, has the jury arrived with verdict?
Yes, we have.
Is this unanimous verdict of all 12 jurors?
Yes, it is.
How do you find, as to count 1 of the indictment charging defendant Michelle Leszczynski on or between May 25th, 1991 and April 23rd, 1992 in the city of South Amboy and or the borough of Sayreville and or the township of Edison and or other municipalities within the county of Middlesex, aforesaid, and or other municipalities all within the jurisdiction of the court did purposely or knowingly cause the death of Timothy Woolsey or did purposely or knowingly cause seriously bodily injury to Timothy Woolsey resulting in his
guilty. And what everyone else heard and saw was that there was this little handsome kid in our neighborhood. He was a good looking kid. And at the end of the day, the picture that stays in my mind the most was the of your son in a ditch with animal feces on it. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget personally going to the scene. Remember, it was raining cats and dogs. And when I saw the garbage and the discarded furniture that was located right there with the prosecutor and Mr. Cravaton by my side, I said, no way. The jury can't see this. And if I could look at this case a little bit more simplistically, the reason you were found guilty, Mr. Leszczynski, was because the jury believed them. You lied, you lied, you lied again, you lied, you lied, and you lied. That's what happened. This beautiful little son that you brought into this world is. I feel bad. I thought about that letter from the kid's father. I remember what they said about the kid's father. He wasn't that good of a father. He had some issues, personal issues, verbally abusive to her, maybe little substance problems, stuff like that. But I also think of the fact that this little kid could have had those family reunions like I did. What? Cousins and cousins and cousins and uncles and aunts and what? Unbelievable. This little kid missed out on that. You shall serve 30 years. I anticipate that you will be old and gray, Michelle Leszczynski, if this verdict stands.
On November 19, 2019, Jacqueline Vigil's regular gym trip in New Mexico turned deadly without her knowing at the hands of Luis Dylann Romero. Now, his actions will be judged in court. The man's constant leg shuffling in court shows nervousness, suggesting there might be a troubling backstory.
On this side, we just squeeze together with a lot of people that try to take it. I got 2 rows. I got 1 on 9.
Thank you to Commander Harstock and his hard work, all the agencies involved that helped this case. And we have been waiting for this moment since November 19th, since my mom was taken from us. I'd like to say thank you to everybody that reached out, everybody that was here with us. This week and a half, it's been tough for everybody, for the family, and we finally got justice for my mom. And I'd like to say thank you to my dad for fighting. He fought very hard every day. I know you loved her very much, and just thank you for fighting, and I know you're gonna keep fighting. But we got justice, and he got what he deserved. So he doesn't deserve to be out here with us in the community. Thank you. Thank you guys.
I also want to thank Mr. Duran and Ms. Stacey. I hope I pronounced your name right. I've been having a hard time asking my children, am I going to, speak out well, you guys. But thank you so much. I want to thank Attorney General Torres for allowing this case to continue under his watch. Now as Attorney General, because as you all know, he was elected Attorney General, and for a while there I was like, wow, what's going to happen to this case now? Are we going to have to start again with a new attorney, and where is it going to go? But thank you so much, appreciate that. I also want to thank the jury, for really listening to the evidence that these two people put together. That was, in my opinion, amazing. I just I can't stop talking about how well they put together the case, and I think that's what brought the victory for Jackie, and of course, those of us that are victims of this horrible crimes, we really, it's a step forward, but there will always be that void that's been created for us to try to fill, which would never fill it up through the rest of our lives. We just have to learn how to live with it. But again, thanks to all the people involved in bringing this case forward and taking it to trial. I know that they worked really hard. I know that these two people put so much hours into it. You had to put so many hours into it. And we kept talking about it, and I would tell my children, they put their heart and soul into this case, and that's what brought the victory, or what I consider a victory for Jackie today. So thank you so much, appreciate it, and thank you.
As you can see, there are two black Cadillacs in the driveway, and the evidence will show that Jackie was in the Cadillac that seems, if you look at the image, appears to be chalked, or the wheels are supported because the vehicle was still on and in reverse when police arrived, and they couldn't quite get into that vehicle. They needed it to be rolling, so she was backing out of her driveway, just as we heard on the 911 call. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a case of not what happened, because we know what happened. Jackie was, but it's a case of who did it, who committed it. And the reason I played that 911 call for you is because the evidence will show that Sam was able to at least see the vehicle that was involved in this case. And that vehicle, the evidence will show, was Luis Talamantes Romero's vehicle. Luis Talamantes Romero was driving around Albuquerque in the early morning hours of November 19th, 2019, with an individual named Isaac Ramirez. They were joyriding, they were screwing around, up to no good. They first went to the Mesa Ridge Apartments, which are off of Ladera and Sequoia in northwest Albuquerque. And we'll show you a map in a second, but it is not very far away from the neighborhood at Las Lomitas. This is essentially, if you're familiar with the west side, off of Ladera and Sequoia, where the old John Brooks used to be, There's a lot of apartments over there. There's some storage areas over there. And when they were at that Mesa Ridge apartment area, they broke into and stole some items from a Cadillac Escalade that was parked at those apartments. You're going to hear from David Castro Aragon and Michaela Gonzalez, who were the owners of that Escalade. They're going to tell you that they heard a noise outside of their apartment. They lived on the second floor, and they heard somebody breaking in. When they looked out, they went to the balcony and saw Talamantes in that same Jeep with somebody in the driver's seat of that Jeep while Talamantes was out and rummaging through their Escalade. When they got Talamantes' attention, "Oh, hey, what are you doing?" Talamantes said, "Dame el cohete. Give me my..." He commanded that of Isaac, who was in the car. He pulled a gun, and they'll tell you, both David and Michaela will tell you they saw it. No shots were fired. They went back inside, and they locked themselves in a room away from that balcony for safety and called 911. Fortunately, and you'll see this, the APD officers who responded to Sam's scene and who are now knowledgeable about this Jeep put two and two together and were able to get surveillance video from the apartment complex at Mesa Ridge. And this is the Jeep that they were able to capture near David and Michaela's home. You'll notice it's a brown or gold Jeep Cherokee with a sanded down front fender. Very similar to what you heard on the 911 call. But it doesn't end there. Talamantes, Romero, and Isaac took off as well. And they took a joyride through Albuquerque with Talamantes, Romero driving. You'll hear that he went down Coors from there and caught I-40, went into the city, went east.
3 months later, he was back in Albuquerque. December the 6th, he was charged with assault on a household member. December the 15th, again charged with battery on a household member and criminal damage to property. January 27, 2007, domestic violence, criminal damage to property. Then on February 22nd, 2008, DWI, arrested for that. April 16, 2008, battery on household member again. April 12, 2008, telephone harassment. April the 14th, 2008, battery on a household member. He was deported for the second time on November the 7th of 2008. He was back in Albuquerque on November the 15th of 2008, same day, charged with aggravated stalking with 4th-degree felony, I believe. November 26th of 2008, charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. June 6th of 2009, charged with assault with a deadly weapon, false imprisonment. January the 6th, 2009, charged with receiving stolen property over $2,500. March 12th, 2009, he was indicted for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon at an occupied building, shooting into or from a moving vehicle. He was sentenced for 8 years, 6 months. He served 4.5 years. He was back, or he was released rather on January the 20th, 2015. Upon release, he was arrested in Colorado for eluding a police officer. True to himself, he was back in Albuquerque on February 26th of 2015. He was charged with auto burglary in Albuquerque. September 5th, 2019, was deported for the 3rd time. On September 30th of 2019, came back in Albuquerque, broke into a truck that was parked just down the street here at the Hyatt Hotel, He obviously caught his hand or fingers and left fingerprints as well as some, which was traced back to him. October 13th of 2019, he had an altercation with some other person. He was shooting at this person's car, put some bullet holes in the back of the trunk. Luckily, he didn't kill somebody then, but, you know. October 29th of 2019, he was posting on his Facebook, he was posting the sale of, you know, probably that he had stolen from that truck that he broke into. November 4th, 2019, again posted photos of himself and the sale of the gun he had with him. And of course, on November 19th, he beat my wife Jackie for no reason, shooting her in the head execution style, showing no mercy or remorse. Less than 48 hours after he burned her, he posted a picture on Facebook, making a post as though celebrating my wife, showing no mercy, no remorse whatsoever. He has shown no respect for any laws. He, as shown by his, continued criminal history, dating all the way back to 2006, it appears that the only time that he was not committing crimes was when he was incarcerated. My wife Jackie paid the ultimate price. She paid with her life. Your Honor, I ask that that this person be punished rather to the full extent of the law for all charges that the jury found him guilty of. This person should not be allowed to walk the streets of any place on this earth. He should spend the rest of his life behind bars. And that, in my opinion, is the only way to keep communities safe. I ask that the sentences for the crimes that he has been convicted not run concurrently, but that he serve time for each individually. You had a choice to make on November 19th, that morning. You could have walked away. Real men would have walked away. Cowards, innocent women. That was the most heinous murder that I could have ever imagined, or that anybody could imagine. I pray that, that there be some justice for him, for my wife Jackie. Thank you very much. Appreciate you allowing me to talk.
Ms. Staley, before we continue, just to give you some time to check my math here.
Yes.
When I did the calculations, I just counted 31, not 31 and a half, because the larceny was amended down to the petty misdemeanor?
That's right. I have 31 years less 1 day.
Okay.
So it would be, I've written it 2 ways, Judge. So another way would be 30 and a half plus 182.
Mr. Talamantes Romero, please stand. We find the defendant, Luis Talamantes Romero, guilty of first-degree murder by deliberate killing as charged in count 1. We find the defendant, Luis Talamantes Romero, guilty of felony murder, which is first-degree murder, as charged in the alternative to count 1. We find the defendant, Luis Talamantes Romero, guilty of aggravated burglary with a deadly weapon, as charged in count 2. We find the defendant, Luis Talamantes Romero, guilty of aggravated burglary with a deadly weapon, as charged in count 3. We find the defendant, Luis Talamantes Romero, guilty of conspiracy to commit aggravated burglary with a deadly weapon, as charged in count 4. We find the defendant, Luis Talamantes Romero, guilty of attempt to commit armed robbery, as charged in count 5. We find the defendant, Luis Talamantes Romero, guilty of tampering with evidence, as charged in count 6. We find the defendant, Luis Talamantes Romero, guilty of conspiracy to commit tampering with evidence, as charged in count 7. We find the defendant, Luis Talamantes Romero, guilty of larceny under $250, as charged in count 8. Do you unanimously find beyond reasonable doubt that Luis Talamantes Romero committed tampering with evidence related to first-degree murder by a deliberate killing as charged in count 1 and or felony murder as charged in the alternative to count 1? Yes. Do you unanimously find beyond a reasonable doubt that a firearm was used in the commission of aggravated burglary with a deadly weapon as charged in count 2? Yes. Do you unanimously find beyond a reasonable doubt that a firearm was used in the commission of an aggravated burglary with a deadly weapon as charged in count 3? Yes. Do you unanimously find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant conspired to commit the crime of aggravated burglary with a deadly weapon? Yes. Do you unanimously find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant conspired to commit the crime of tampering with evidence? Yes.
The judge will wait until the crime is proven before giving the final verdict. Eventually, the judge will let everyone speak. They will consider all factors and give the sentence according to the law.
The defendant here showed a complete indifference for human life, and he does not deserve a life outside of prison walls. Therefore, the state is respectfully requesting, Your Honor, that you sentence him to life plus 31 years less 1 day. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Just to begin, Your Honor, I want to say that we respect, we respect the pain and grief that the Vigil family is going through. I hope they understand that this has been a regrettable tragedy. I will tell the court and everyone here that my client, despite being convicted at trial last month, still maintains his innocence. I believe the bulk of the sentence that the court could impose is mandated by law, and I think that certainly the court is going to do that. We would ask the court to run these counts concurrently. Mr. Talamantes is a 35-year-old man, and the charge alone will take up most of the balance of his potential life. Likewise, Judge, I think we would ask the court for credit, pre-sentence confinement credit, to include all of the time since he was arrested until today's date. And with respect to the felony charge, we would agree that that count should be vacated or merged at the very least with respect to sentencing. And that is essentially what we're going to ask for, Judge. Thank you.
Great. Ms. Reinhardt, does your client wish to address the court?
I don't believe he wants to make a statement.
Okay. So I don't believe that I have a lot of discretion as far as how I'm sentencing Mr. Talamantes Romero. He has already been convicted on a charge out of Texas, so I think once we're done here, he's actually going to be transported back there where they're going to have primary jurisdiction, so he's going to serve that count first. I'm also not going to be able to run this concurrent to that charge, and so he's not going to come back to New Mexico until he's done serving the sentence, because I can't wait for him to be sentenced there before transferring back here. I don't think anybody's asking for that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run some of these concurrent, but most of the way that I'm structuring this is thinking about the charges that ran together, the events that ran together, and then not necessarily looking at this as merger, but looking at this as each event, which I think deserves a different sentence or a different punishment for each event. The charge that will run first will be the first degree murder, that's count 1, for willful and deliberate. I will vacate the felony murder conviction, which was an alternate to count 1. I will then have him serve the aggravated burglary, which is 9 years plus the enhancement, That will run concurrent to count 5, which was the attempt to commit armed robbery. And so those two will run concurrently for 10 years. Count 3 will then run next, which is the aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. That's 9 years plus the firearm enhancement of 1 year. He will then serve the conspiracy to commit aggravated burglary with a deadly weapon, which was the conspiracy that he served with Isaac. This is one of those cases where I don't think the conspiracies merged together because I think that each of them was a distinct act. And so that will run next. Count 5, as I mentioned, is running concurrent to count 2. Count 6, he will then serve his sentence on count 6, which will run concurrently with count 6 is the tampering with evidence for either dismantling or cleaning and dismantling to an extent that will Jeep Cherokee. Those two charges, or that charge will run concurrently with the conspiracy charge, so that will run concurrently for 3 years. And the final charge is the larceny charge. And I think that one is actually just 6 months as opposed to 6 months minus 1 day because of the petty misdemeanor. So the way that I count it, he'll be serving 26 and a half years after he does the life sentence for the first degree murder charge. Anything further from the state?
Just to clarify, Judge, count 5 will run concurrent to count 2 and count 6 will run concurrent to count 7?
Yes.
Okay, and your Honor is not finding merger, you're just running those concurrent?
Yes.
Okay, understood, Your Honor.
There is no request for merger. Anything further from the state?
No, Your Honor.
And from defense?
No, ma'am, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor. All right.
Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.